Welcome to the MasterMind Library. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and your host of the MasterMind Library, the home of the MasterMind Book Club. I hope everybody's doing well. Blessings, peace. We are getting close to the end of ImHotep, the Vizier and physician of King Zoser. And today we're in chapter 5 on episode 72. Where we're going to be focusing on ancient Egyptian medicine. Powerful stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's dive right in. Let's go to our table of contents. And we are on page 74. All right, let's make it a little bit bigger. Everybody can see it. All right. Make this a little bit larger. All right, we're good to go now. Ancient Egyptian medicine. A short excursus may be permitted in order to indicate the extraordinary development of the healing art that had been reached by the time of ImHotep. The full story is a fascinating one, but it cannot be told here. With scarcely a trace of infancy, the Ars Medica suddenly emerges, exhibiting an unparalleled stage of evolution in Egypt when compared with any other country. In the words of Foucault, the Egyptian science of healing constituted from the very beginning a system several thousand years in advance of the rest of human society. At the same time, medicine was closely interwoven with magic, each of these elements acting and reacting on the other. The briefest survey of what had been achieved in the Pyramid Age must suffice. It will be convenient in the first place to summarize the progress made in the Ars Medendi, and then to deal with the elements of magic and occultism which were closely interwoven with it. Fortunately, a considerable number of medical documents have survived, written in the hieratic script on rolls of papyrus. The most important of these is the Ebers Papyrus, which was actually written in the early 18th dynasty, ca. 1550 BC, but which was evidently compiled from one or more other books many centuries earlier. Indeed, the document itself states that some portions date from the first dynasty and therefore were in part at least in existence during ImHotep's lifetime. The papyrus contains a long list of prescriptions for numerous named ailments and specifies the remedies to be used, as well as their doses and the mode of administration. Evidently, considerable progress had been made, especially in clinical examination, diagnosis, and therapeutics. Further, there was an accurate knowledge of the skeleton and of the method of treating fractures successfully. The position and function. Hold on, let me turn this light down a little bit. 1 second, y'all. Sorry about that. This light is. I need to change one of these bulbs. The function of the stomach and intestines were known, as well as the fact that the great blood vessels run from the heart to every part of the body. Some of the glosses in the Edwin Smith Papyrus reveal an acquaintance with anatomy, which could only have been acquired by dissection. In the Ebers Papyrus, lengthy descriptions are given of the vascular system, and the widespread influence of a disordered cardiac action is recognized, the heart being described as the beginning of all the members. There is also some inkling of a circulation of the blood. Pulsation was perceived, although the actual pumping action of the heart was not understood. On the other hand, the relation of the pulse to the heart was well recognized. Thus, the papyrus says, when the heart is diseased, its work is imperfectly performed. The vessels proceeding from the heart become inactive so that you cannot feel them. They become full of air and water. This latter statement is explained by the belief that the arteries contained air instead of blood, an erroneous conclusion based on the condition observed at postmortems. The conception of air reaching to every part of the body was familiar, although the air was supposed to travel by the arteries. The breath, when entering the nostrils, was believed to penetrate to the heart and internal organs, and to supply the whole blood abundantly. Surgery was not highly developed. The knife and cautery were familiar, and simple operations were regularly performed on the head, neck, and extremities, although surgeons never went so far as to open the abdomen. Fractures were treated with splints made of fiber, and many observations on mummies show that union with but little displacement was secured. More complicated operations were performed on the domestic animals than on man. The custom of mummification, although not connected with medicine either in purpose or practice, exercised a profound influence on the growth of that science. Not only did the opening of the abdomen and the removal of the viscera familiarize the Egyptians with the form and position of many internal organs, but it reconciled the people of Egypt for more than 30 centuries to the idea of cutting the dead human body. Thus, it overcame the popular prejudice against systematic dissection, which prevented Greek physicians from acquiring a knowledge of practical anatomy in their own country. It is, however, in the realms of diagnosis and therapeutics that the most astounding advance had been made, indicating a real interest in disease. Knowledge was admittedly empiric, but the accumulated experience of remedies employed during many centuries had borne rich fruit. At least 15 distinct diseases of the abdomen, 11 of the bladder, 10 of the rectum and anus, 29 of the eyes, 6 of the ears, 18 of the skin were diagnosed and treated on definite principles. From the symptoms described in the papyri, about 250 different kinds of disease can be differentiated. Evidently, the physicians who practice on the banks of the Nile possess in some measure the scientific spirit, were capable of accurate clinical observations, and competent to coordinate and interpret symptoms. In fact, so minute a classification of disease implies considerable scientific advance. Herodotus, in the following quotation, refers to the prevalence of specialism as a feature of Egyptian medicine. The art of medicine is thus divided. Each physician applies himself to one disease only, and not more. All places abound in physicians. Some are for the eyes, others for the head, others for the teeth, others for the intestines, and others for internal disorders. Recently discovered medical papyri, however, throw considerable doubt on such specialism, every part of medicine being apparently practiced by physicians. Moreover, the Westcar papyrus indicates that midwifery was not regarded as a department of medicine as was formerly believed. Veterinary medicine was not overlooked, and a papyrus, that of Kahun, devoted to that branch of the healing art, has survived. Further, further evidence of the advanced state of Egyptian medicine may be found in the extensive materia medica which formed the Armamentarium Medici. The Edwin Smith papyrus also reveals to us that there were in early Egypt medical practitioners who carried out dissection of the human body, organized their observations, and based conclusions on facts they had observed. Evidently, they acted on the principle nec sillet mors. A large number of the drugs used several millennia ago still figure in modern pharmacopoeias. The flora of Egypt was rich in medicinal herbs, as Homer points out. Evidently, their therapeutic properties were carefully studied and utilized. Amongst vegetable products, frequently mentioned are castor oil, opium, aloes, coriander, caraway, gentian, turpentine, myrrh, juniper, fennel, henbane, linseed, and peppermint. But recent research throws much doubt, at least in some cases, on their correct identification. On the other hand, iron, soda, lime, salts of lead, sulfate of copper, magnesia were certainly amongst the mineral products in use. Other drugs were derived from the animal body, such as gall and blood from the ox, lion, and hippopotamus, as well as fats from these and other animals. Even coprotherapy was common. It is interesting to observe that the use of the secretions and parts of the animal body as remedies, now a worldwide practice, was first introduced by Egyptian physicians. It is pleasant to think that even in those far off days, opium was used to relieve poor, suffering humanity. And Pliny states that among the herbs given to Helen of Troy was nepenthes, which caused oblivion of sorrow. Even the forms in which remedies were administered showed some clinical insight into pathological processes. Gargles, salves, lozenges, inhalations, snuffs, suppositories, pills, capsules, enemata, fumigations, poultices, and plasters were all employed. Ingredients were added for the purpose of disguising nauseous drugs. The large number of remedies and prescriptions mentioned in the Ebers Papyrus prove conclusively that therapeutics were carefully studied. The same papyrus shows that remedies were classified into special groups, amongst which were sedatives, narcotics, hypnotics, antispasmodics, mydriotics, myotics, expectorants, tonics, emetics, carminatives, purgatives, astringents, cholagogues, anthelmintics, diuretics, diaphoretics, emmenagogues, oxyticics, galactagogues, hemostatics, emollients, disinfectants, antidotes, and so forth. In brief, while scientific medicine was still in its infancy, empiric therapeutics were highly advanced. No sketch of the Egyptian knowledge of medicine, however, is complete without reference to the prevailing faith in magic. Magic was the mother of medicine and never ceased to influence its offspring. In fact, any eulogy of Egyptian therapeutics is heavily discounted when the ever-present accompaniment of magical formulas, amulets, and incantations is taken into consideration. Disease was generally attributed not to a disturbance of normal functions, but to a malign spirit or god who had entered the body and attacked it furiously. Unless this evil spirit could be expelled before irreparable damage had been done, recovery was hopeless. The evil spirits or demons insinuated themselves into the individual by the nostrils, mouth, or ears, and once inside, devoured his vital substance. The character and termination of the resulting disease depended on the progress made in the destructive activity of the invading spirit. Its virulence depending also on times and seasons of the year, on lucky and unlucky days, and similar contingencies. The physician priest who treats the sick person must first of all discover the nature and, if possible, the name of the evil spirit in possession, and then seek to expel it by every means in his power. He must be expert in magic, knowing suitable incantations, and skillful in making amulets adapted to the occasion. As opportunity presents, he must resort to invocations and impressive ritual. Material remedies must also be tried, and recourse had to the rich pharmacopoeia which the experience of centuries had accumulated. The best practitioners were in some measure rationalistic, and carefully diagnosed between those cases for which magic and exorcisms were most suited, those for which incubation in the temple promised the best results, and those which called for incantations accompanied by drugs. The following is the following is a specimen of an incantation which had to be recited during the preparation of a medicine in order to endow it with the right power. That Isis might make free. That Isis might make Horus free from all evil that his brother Set had done to him when he slew his father Osiris. O Isis, great enchantress, free me. Release me from all evil, red things, from the fever of the god and the fever of the goddess, from death, and death from pain, and the pain which comes over me, as thou hast freed, as thou hast released thy son Horus, whilst I enter into the fire and go forth from the water, etc. Or and see. A different formula was recited as the invalid swallowed his dose. Welcome, remedy, welcome, which destroyeth the trouble in this my heart and in these my limbs. The magic of Horus is victorious in the remedy. Another common magical practice was to write down an incantation on papyrus, to wash it off into the medicine, and then to administer the latter to the patient, as is still commonly done in Eastern countries, instead of such a simple phrase as prescription for curing a disease. The expression prescription for expelling or terrifying such a disease would be adopted, with the evident implication of demonical demonical possession. This view of the nature of disease naturally had a fundamental and blighting influence on therapeutics. Disease caused by the pernicious influence of an indwelling spirit must be combated by magic, incantations, and spells, although remedies might also relieve symptoms and abolish pain. Rational therapeutics and magic were thus closely interwoven in the practice of the magician physician, who had to distinguish between diseases curable by drugs and those requiring psychotherapy. In the early days, superstitious and sacerdotal measures probably predominated, while as time passed on, exact observation and therapeutics more and more gained the upper hand, sorcery yielding to science. The choice between surgical and rational methods of treatment will also largely depend on the philosophical views of the physician, and we have evidence that much less magic was used in some cases than in others. Probably magic ceremonies were resorted to as a last resort when the skill of the physician was baffled. The malade imaginaire was doubtless as common a phenomenon as he is today. Many faith cures took place at famous shrines. It may seem strange that such an apparently absurd occult force as magic retained a potent influence through all the centuries of ancient Egyptian history. On the other hand, it must be remembered that sick persons, even if they belong to the educated class, have some excuse for fantastic actions and beliefs. They are abnormally emotional and suggestible, and readily clutch at any remedy, even if irrational, that presents itself, especially if powerfully supported by tradition and authority. As is well known, the benefits conferred by medicaments depend largely on the confidence felt in the physician and in the prescriptions. We cannot doubt that MHotep, with his wide outlook on life, his experience of men and human affairs, and his interest in astronomy and other sciences, inclined to the side of scientific medicine. Indeed, as Herman says, the son of the goddess, Sekhmet, the demigod Imhotep, was in later times considered to be the creator of medical knowledge. Hygiene. The advanced state of hygiene also proves a high state of civilization. The Egyptians boasted that they were the healthiest of all mortals, and regulated the sanitation of the town, of the dwelling, and even of the person, while the priests set up a high standard of cleanliness by their frequent ablutions and the immaculate purity of their clothing. The homes of the people were fumigated from time to time to keep them sweet, suitable precautions being taken to prevent the annoyance of wasps and mosquitoes. There were also some knowledge of antiseptics, since the virtues of extreme dryness and of certain chemicals like niter, common salt, and alcohol as preservatives were recognized. Evidently, the importance of sanitation was well understood. Even in those far off days, experience had taught the lesson that, yeah, I'm not sure what that says, and it looks like Greek. The value of preventative medicine was also recognized. The Egyptians probably knew that the majority of diseases proceed from indigestion and excess of eating, and thus evils they avoided or combated by frequent days of abstinence, by emetics, gentle aperients, and other means of relieving the system. The superiority of prophylaxis as compared with therapeutics was evidently appreciated. The whole manner of life, says Diodorus, was so evenly ordered that it would appear as though it had been arranged according to the rules of health by a learned physician, rather than by a lawgiver. These few facts will suffice to indicate in outline the extraordinary interest that was taken in remedies in ancient Egypt, and the progress that had been made. But it cannot be claimed that Egyptian medicine ever developed into a scientific system. Rather should its stage be described as one in which superstition and science struggled for mastery. Which indeed of us can say that this perennial conflict has, even today, been finally won by either combatant? And that concludes chapter 5. Next episode, 73, we will be finishing up with chapter 6, Honor to Whom Honor is Due. So let's go back down to the beginning. All right, there's no page 1. So let's do page I. No, there's no page I. All right, let's do page 1 then. There's got to be a page 1. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's make sure that this is the last chapter before I say what I was saying. I don't want to jump to conclusions too quickly. Get past the prologue. All right, there we go. Yep. All right, so we are concluding ImHotep, the Vizier and physician of King Zoser, on episode 73. Thank you all very much for tuning in and listening and learning. We definitely need to do that together as much as possible. But I got to take my son to football practice. So y'all be blessed. And as you already know, expose your gift.